Before you can edit your video, you need to get the source files on a hard drive, and exactly which hard drive may depend on your particular needs. Now, a lot of folks don't own external drives, and they choose to copy the data onto their computer. The challenge with this, though, is that you create a bit of a backlog. You see, if you're trying to read the video files off of a drive and run the application off the same drive, you can really start to get things backed up a little bit. And instead, it's generally a better idea to put your video files on an external hard drive. Now, hopefully that external hard drive is also a fast drive with a fast connection. Now, what do I mean by fast? Well, the actual read speed of the drive is pretty important. You want to make sure that the drive itself can put the data out quickly. Now, if you're working with video files from something like a GoPro or a DSLR, these don't require quite as much drive speed. But a lot of video formats, particularly uncompressed file types or perhaps raw video, can really require a faster drive. But it's not just the speed of the drive. Now, drives like SSDs, very fast. Drives can also be paired together in a RAID or a redundant array of disks, which improves their performance. But besides the drive itself, you also need to think about the connection type. I'm going to be using a drive here that is actually using a USB-C connection, also similar to the Thunderbolt 3 connection type. This can be easily connected to my computer. So take the cord and connect it, and then take the same cord and plug that into the computer. Once the drive powers up, it should mount, and this particular drive is rated to handle a lot of the lighter weight video formats. But if I was working with heavier duty type formats, I would turn to a heavier duty drive. In this case, those rated drives we mentioned before, using connections like Thunderbolt or something else more robust. Simple drives that you pick up at a normal store may not be enough. You might need to turn to a dedicated professional drive or do a bit of research here, but make sure the drive you pick is rated to handle video files. The ones that you pick up at a typical office store or big box electronics store typically are not. And this is one of the areas where most people get frustrated when editing video. If you find that your computer locks up or that the video playback is skipping or dropping frames, well, the most likely culprit is going to be your hard drive. Before you're able to edit video, you need to transfer it from the memory card. The memory card that goes into your camera is not fast enough to edit off of and won't hold up well to repeated use this way. Take the card and insert it into your computer. Now, in this case, I'm using a card reader that's attached to the side of my computer. There are many different options available on this front, but simply mount the card using a fast card reader. Once the card is inserted, give it a moment to mount on your computer so that the files become visible. You can then navigate to the disk. Depending upon the format of the drive, the video may be recorded in different ways. This card is from a Sony camera, and if I look at the info here and give it a moment to calculate the folder size, you'll see that these different folders have different content. And therein lies the video files in the clip folder. Now, for best results, I encourage you to copy the entire memory card. So, go up to a higher level and select the memory card and choose Copy. Then navigate to your hard drive, make a new folder, and step inside and create additional folders. For example, since this is the first card from the chute, I would call it Card 01, and you can even start to put additional information about the memory card before the folder name, such as the date. Step inside and paste the media, allowing it to copy, taking the contents of the full card. You also can drag the disk into here so that it performs a full copy. Let it complete the copy before doing anything with the disk. Now, this process is not the fastest necessarily, and you can speed things up by using a faster card reader. Additionally, the speed of the memory card and the speed of the hard drive comes into play. So if you find yourself needing to do this a lot, consider investing in a faster card reader and faster memory cards. Now, This is just purely for illustrative purposes. I've already put together the files that you're going to use for these exercises, but I want you to be familiar with the process of getting the material onto a computer that's fast enough. I would suggest that you put those exercise files on an external hard drive if you have a fast one. If not, you can leave them on your internal drive if it's an SSD, and you should see good performance. Before you begin to edit in an editing tool like Premiere Pro, I suggest organizing your hard drive. For me, this means using a media template to really keep things in standard folders. This way, when I go back to a project, it's easy to find things, particularly if I go back a few months down the road. Inside the exercise folder, you'll find an archive called Common Media Folder. Duplicate that, and you can double-click to unzip it. If you open up this thing, you'll see inside common folders to help you organize a project. For example, Capture Scratch is the raw material from disk. This is where you would put your actual memory cards. The project files contains any files that were used to organize the project. Graphic sources would be things like your Photoshop files, any renders from programs like After Effects, audio, such as music or narration, any stock footage, the final exports that you put out for sharing online or for giving to others, and any paperwork. Now, I've already taken the time and have organized a folder here for you. You'll see that it's a little bit different than the template, but I've made it match the needs for this project. For example, under Capture Scratch, I have folders called B-roll and interview, and the multi-camera footage. Under project files, I have folders to hold what I need for different materials. And then, for example, under audio, I have a folder for music as well as sync sound when the audio is recorded independently of the camera. This makes it easy to really keep things organized. Now, there's a lot we can do as we move things into these folders, but my suggestion is that you keep things organized. By using a standard folder approach like this, it's easy to find things, particularly as you switch between applications or when it comes time to backing up your project. There are many ways to browse your footage, from the operating system to standalone tools, but I suggest taking the time to get familiar with your footage ahead of time to make it a bit simpler. If you are working at the operating system level, you might find yourself going into a folder to look at material. You'll notice here, for example, that the original camera names have been assigned to the clips. I can make this a bit larger so I can see things more easily. This is useful, but when I want to find clips, a clip called DSC7472 is not as useful as walking on road. Now, some people choose to rename their material here in advance. Others will do the renaming inside the editing tool. There are pros and cons to both, but if you find video editing a little bit intimidating, I suggest going ahead and organizing the material in advance, naming it and getting it into folders to pre-edit or pre-organize. One way of doing this is you could take advantage of tools like Adobe Bridge, which might be a tool that you've used in the past for other projects. So, for example, let's navigate to our hard drive. And I'll go to that original files. You don't have access to these files because they're too big for you to download with the exercise files. So just follow along by watching. In this case, I can select an individual clip. And with it highlighted, I'll see it here loaded in the preview area. I can click play to watch it back. This works well for material captured on a DSLR, mirrorless, or action camera, typically in the movie or MPEG-4 format. Within here, you can actually start to add stars and ratings to clips, as well as rename clips if you choose to do so. These stars and ratings are a lot like using a tool like Lightroom to organize photos, and if you rename the file, it is actually renamed, and the ratings will show up inside of Premiere Pro. This is a great way to pre-organize. Now, let's contrast this to the material that I've already moved around a bit. The exercise files that you're going to work with have already been organized. And if you take a look, you'll see that in the Capture Scratch folder, there are 3 folders. The B-roll was organized into one folder. And the clips have been given a more descriptive name. Some of these clips are quite long, containing multiple shots in a single take. For example, if we look at this garage slider, you'll notice several different angles back to back during the performance of the song as the videographer made changes. We'll split this up later into smaller pieces. But in general, the clips have clearly descriptive names: Beach Walk 1, Beach Walk 2, Dock Sitting Close-Up, Dock Sitting Master, Dock Sitting Wide Shot, helping me understand the composition and the subject matter. If we go into the Interview folder, there's our interview with our subject. And here are the different camera angles from the concert portion. Cameras 1 through 5 with a description of the camera angle type. Because during this class it's important that you're looking at the same material as I have, I've already organized this material. But take a moment to study that folder and get familiar with the logic behind it. The exact way you organize media is up to you, but I encourage something that's simple so that not only you can understand it, but so can somebody else if they take over the project or need to work with it in the future.